Hello guys, I'm Shantanu Mondal. I have completed a BTech with Computer Sciences and Engineering. Presently, I am working as a banking professional and also preparing for the UPSC exam. So here I'm going to share my good practices, and one of the good practice is to cover the NCERT. So today I'm going to cover the chapter 1 from class 12 themes in Indian history part 1 book. Now this talks about the Harappan civilization, and some important things I'm going to cover is the Harappan seal, and then we'll move on to the map which contains various sites of that Harappan civilization. Some important sites are Mohenjo-daro, Harappa itself, Banwali, Kalibangan, Ganediwala, Kotdiji, Chanhudaro, Dhulavira, Nageshwar, Rangpur, Lothal, Sabarmati River Valley, Mahi River Valley, and just remember these are the 5 tributaries of the river Indus. Now this is the base of the Harappan civilization. So they are talking about the beginnings of that civilization, the subsistence strategies, the agricultural technologies, and they were talking about the urban planning, which is an important aspect of the Harappan civilization. And to describe the urban planning, they have taken Mohenjo-daro as an example. So from this map we can clearly see that there are two important parts, citadel and lower town. So there was planning. These are the higher areas, these are the lower areas. We will come into it later. Next, they are talking about the drainage system, which is one of the most important aspect of the Harappan civilization. They're talking about the domestic architecture. They're talking about the citadel in details because this is very important. And while reading history, we are going to look at things from different perspectives. First of all, the architecture of that time means how did people build their houses, the routes, and everything else. And then we will move on to the socio-economic conditions during that time. Then we will move on to the administration and the relations between the administration and the people. And last of all, we will see what are the modern day implications of that particular civilization. So here also the renowned historians tried to track the social differences, and for that they have taken the examples of the burials found during the excavation. They were looking for the luxuries because luxury items can only be used by the influential peoples or the rich people. They are talking about the craft production in economy. A job is an important thing, so they are talking about some small settlement and some big settlements. And the small settlements sometimes were used as the manufacturing hub or the manufacturing center during that time, and they have also identified the centers for the production of the goods. They have also talked about strategies for procuring the materials. The material used to be procured from the subcontinent and also from the distant lands like the Oman, like the Middle East, etc. So, and they're also talking about seal, scripts, and wets, which are 3 important aspects during the Harappan civilization. And the writing style, the literacy, everything is talked about here. They're talking about the ancient authority, that is the administration. So these are a very important thing. The end of the civilization is also here, but there is no means actually foolproof logic to that one. So these are the things they have discussed, and we are also going to look at this important timetable which talks about the major periods in the early Indian archaeology and also the different uh, excavations or the major developments in the Harappan archaeology. This is not very important, just remember the names, especially this Alexander Cunningham, who was the founder of the Archaeological Survey of India, which is headquartered at New Delhi in 1861. Then we move on to the some questions like how do archaeologists stress the socio-economic differences in the Harappan society, and what are the differences that they notice? Would you agree that the drainage system in the Harappan cities indicates a town planning? Give reasons for your answer. And this is another important question which can be written for good marks. Describe some of the distinctive features of Mohenjo-daro. Just add to it that what are the modern day implications of those features? Means can we find some of them in modern day town planning or anything else? So these are the important things. So before moving on to the Harappan civilization itself, let's talk about the timeline of the Indian archaeology. From 2 million before present to 35,000 before present, this period is as a whole known as the Paleolithic period. Now Paleolithic means, this paleo means old and this lithic means stone. So this consists of the old stone age, and especially we have already come across the terms hunter and gatherers, means people used to uh, make tools out of stones, and the subsistence strategies were still not present during that time. So this is important for the culture. Now here, during the Paleolithic period, look at it, the lower Paleolithic, the middle Paleolithic and the upper Paleolithic, and some important sites you need to remember: the Bhimbetka, the Adamgarh, Bhimbetka in Madhya Pradesh, and look, the hand axe, clever industries, tools made on flex and blades, means all are made up of stone. Then comes the Mesolithic, Neolithic and Chalcolithic. Chalcolithic is important. Chalco means copper and lithic means stone, means people start using copper as well as stone, and this is the first time some real culture was developed. Cultures like the Ahar culture, which is the oldest, the Kaitha culture, the Malwa culture, the Salvara culture, the Pravas culture, the Rangpur culture, etc. So we need to talk about these cultures a little bit. Let's move on to the culture. There is Ganeshwar culture, which is based on Jodhpur. Jodhpur is in Rajasthan. Here we can see it, the Ganeshwar Jodhpura culture, which is very important culture of the ancient India. Next, we move on to the oldest Indian culture, which is known as the Ahar culture. It is again, look at, this is Gujarat, this is Rajasthan. So this is somewhere around here. So Ahar is an important place where around which this culture was developed. So this was named after that particular place. And another important culture was the Malwa culture. We can see the Malwa here. This we will also cover this Malwa in geography. So these are important. Now here I have jotted down some other cultures also and the places of their origin. During the Paleolithic period, there was Son culture, Madrasian culture, which was in Chennai. There was Nevasa culture, which was around the Godavari Valley in Madhya Pradesh. There is Acheulean culture in the Deccan and the Rajasthan. So these four are the examples of the Paleolithic culture. The Swan culture in Pakistan, Punjab, in the Madrasian culture, the Nevasa culture, and the Acheulean culture. Next, we will move on to some Chalcolithic, which is a very important phase of the Indian history. Here we have used the metal. Now, Gangetic Basin first came into the fore. If we look at the sites of the Harappan civilization, we will never found the Gangetic Basin to be a part of the Paleolithic sites. Look at here. These are the diagram which contains the Paleolithic sites in India. Some important sites are there. Just remember the names: the Chittorgarh, Kota, Mahi River Basin, Sabarmati River Basin, Koregaon in Maharashtra, Chandoli in Maharashtra, Bhimbetka in Madhya Pradesh, Ghataprabha in Karnataka, and Suvarnarekha in Odisha, Shikarpur in Maharashtra, River Rero in Jharkhand, Sohan Valley in Punjab, which talked about the Swan culture just a little bit ago. And look at here, this place, particular place, no example from the Paleolithic time was found in this place, because nearby the Ganga basin, it is very rare that you can find hard stone to make tools. Same thing happens with this place, the Brahmaputra river valley. We cannot find stone here properly because this place is made up of alluvial soil. So it is a very rare that you can find some Paleolithic examples from these particular places. So let's move on to the other nodes also. And here are some important sites of the Harappa civilization. Amri in Pakistan contains the remains of the rhinoceros. Banawali in India Haryana, contains the barley terracotta figure of the plow, a terracotta figure like this. Next, Chanhudaro contains the bead making factory. Use of lipstick was there during that time. Daimabad in India, Maharashtra, contains the sculpture bronze chariot. This is the southernmost IBC site where we can find bronze. Then we can find Dholavira, we will talk about it, Harappa itself, Kalibangan, Kotbala, Kotdiji, Kunal in Haryana, Lothal, which was an important bead making factory, a dockyard itself. So there was sea trade during that time. Then the Mehergarh, which was the earliest agricultural community, which is in present-day Pakistan. Mohenjo-daro itself, which is famous for the Great Bath, the Bull Seal, the Pasupati, etc. Then is Sanauli, which is an important burial site with 125 burials. Sarkotoda, which is a site where we can find the bones of a horse. Now let's move on to the note from the NCERT itself. First of all, it is about Harappan seal. Harappan seal, according to the book, is the most distinctive artifacts. It was made up of a steatite stone. Steatite stone is a kind of soft stone, so it is very easy to make a seal out of this stone. So you just take the stone, make some impression, and that will be called a seal. Now what did this seal contain? Animal motifs. Now some people were illiterate who can understand Sanskrit or even written languages, and some other people who were not literate would have understood this animal motifs. Now Sanskrit from this time is still undeciphered. This is an important archaeological evidences. What are archaeological evidence? Archaeological evidences are evidences people leave behind from their times. We interpret them to picturize the life of that time. Sometimes this interpretation used to get changed, so that will give a new breakthrough for any historical event. Now from this part, some important keywords are there: civilization itself, archaeological evidences, and steatite. Civilization is noted twice here, sorry for that. Now question is, what is a civilization? Simply, before asking the question why Harappan civilization, which as an answer that between Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, Harappan sites were discovered earlier, so this is known as the Harappan civilization. But the basic question is, what is a civilization? Now this is an important thing. Civilization, this is taken from Wikipedia. It is any complex society characterized by urban development, social stratification. Strata means layer in the society, means different kind of people with different job, different economic conditions, and different ideologies, etc. Imposed by a cultural elite, symbolic systems of communications, and a perceived separation and domination over the natural environment, which is very important. So in civilization, there is a sense of centralization. Centralization of what? Centralization of the rule. There is domestication of people, domestication of animal, domestication of resources. Now there comes the natural environment, domination over natural environment. Why? Because it is getting domesticated. Specialization of labor, that means you are getting diversified jobs. Culture, because in a civilization people will eat one kind of crops, people will eat one kind of food, people will perform one kind of dance, they will entertain together. So this creates some culture. Now culturally ingrained ideologies, taxation will be there in civilization, and society dependence upon farming. It is not individual anymore, it is a societal dependence on the farming. Let's move on to the next page. So if we see the history, first of all, the human beings were hunter and gatherer. That kind of society is called egalitarian society. Next came the horticultural pastoral societies, where there was a chief and a commoner, means a ruler and some common people. Next came a very complex structure or highly stratified structure of chiefdoms. Kings will be there, noble class will be there, slave will be there. This stratification is depending upon the manner of livelihood, means who is doing what. So civilization will consist of social hierarchies, organized structure, and institutional governments. We can see that from the very old age, the idea of institutional governments, social hierarchy, and organized structure was there. That means there was a sense of settlement. So here, what are the different aspects that we can see in a civilization? Means of subsistence, yeah. Mostly the earlier civilizations depend on agriculture. There was an exception. The civilization in Peru did not depend on agriculture only, they depend on the maritime resources. Now, in a civilization, there will be different types of livelihood. There will be a settlement pattern, forms of government, social stratification, economic systems, literacy, and culture. Now, during the old time, there was gift economy, means the king or the ruler used to take gifts from the common people, which later get translated into barter systems, and some later period it becomes money. Now, in culture, we will include the literature, the art forms of that time, the architecture, the organized religion, education, and an important thing, the state-based decision making is also a culture. Now, other important thing is, now let's move on to the Indus Valley civilization. Now, question is, why Indus Valley civilization is called Harappan civilization? First, we have already made it clear why is it called a civilization. Now, why is it Harappan civilization? Because it mostly resembles the Harappan culture. Now, what is culture? Culture is a group of objects distinctive in style which are usually found together within a specific geographic area and a period of time. So, space as well as time, both are very important to define a culture. So space and time combined with distinctiveness in style. So what are the different culture? What are the different means examples from where we can find out the Harappan culture? There, the seals, the weights, the baked bricks, the stone blades, and the beads. They are also found in faraway lands such as Afghanistan, Jammu and Balochistan, and Gujarat. However, Harappan culture has different timelines. Starting from 2600 before Christ, it ends around 1900 BCE. So the earlier period is known as the early Harappa, and the later period is known as the later Harappa. So by now we are very clear that why Indus Valley civilization is also known as the Harappan civilization. Let's move on to the next, beginning. As we see in the text, in the beginning, it is distinctive pottery, agriculture plus pastoralism, craft, small settlements, and no large building. This is very important thing. No large building, that means society was almost equal. Large scale burning at some places, that means people went away from those places. There was a gap between the early and the late Harappan civilization. So that means during that transformation, there was something must have happened. We are yet to know about it. Now there were subsistence strategies, strategies on which people live by. Wide range of plant and animal products were available. Fish was available. Now from the map we can see that sea is not far away, rivers are plenty, so it is very common that there will be fishes. Now the grains and seeds were there. The dietary practices are reconstructed by the archaeologists from the grains and from the seeds they are used. Now among the grains there were wheat, barley, lentil, chickpea, sesame, and millets. In the Gujarat region, rice was very rare. So people mostly live on wheat, barley, lentil, and millets. Let's move on to the next part. Now from that time, those were the plant part. From the animal bones were found in the Harappan site, from which we can find that the cattle, the sheep, the goat, the buffalo, and the pig, they were domesticated. Bones of wild species such as boar, deer, gharials was also found. Now we talk about the agricultural technologies, because now here's the question, why is it called the agricultural technology? Now the technology as we know today will come with productivity. Harappan civilization or the Mohenjo-daro or the big cities, they are talking about giving shelter to lots of people. So lots of people means you need to higher the productivity, and there comes the technology. Means people were not merely means allowing the crops to grow. They were using sense of science. Okay, so grains and seeds prove that agriculture was there, but it is difficult to reconstruct the agricultural practices. Seals and terracotta means terracotta is the burnt earthen uh, means remains, which figures the bulls were known. Oxen were used for plowing, so these are found in some sites. Cholistan and Banwali, these were the early Harappan level the plowed field at Kalibangan, two different furrows at right angles to each other. That means this. So these were the pattern of the field. So that means there were two different crops, one along this and one along this. This is also giving an idea about the high population, because you will only be growing two crops when there is a requirement of two crops. Now what are the different tools used in agriculture? Because this was semi-arid lands where the rainfall is not very high, and actually the rate of evapotranspiration, that means the water getting out of the water wetlands as a part of evaporation, is more than actual rate of precipitation or rainfall. So irrigation was required. Now how the irrigation was done? Canal at Sortugai in Afghanistan is an example, but if we come into Punjab and Sindh, we cannot find canals. Now two possible reasons can be there. One is they used to irrigate from the well, and the canals were silted up, so we cannot find the traces of canal anymore. There was an important site we have already, Dholavira, where we can find a water reservoir for the agricultural water. Now the most distinctive part and the most important part of Mohenjo-daro comes with the planned urban center. Now Mohenjo-daro urban center was planned in two sections. The smaller and the higher part is known as the citadel, and the larger and the lower part is known as the lower town. Now citadels were the buildings were constructed on mud brick platforms. So first platforms were made out of mud bricks, and over this some structures or buildings were built. So that's why it was higher. It was world physically separated from the lower town. Generally they were found in the western part. The lower town, several buildings on platforms, there was wall in on the different parts. Large scale of labor mobilization was required because there were large number of buildings built. It's an example of a planned settlement. And there is an important fact: standardized measurement of bricks. The length, breadth and the height of the bricks were into the ratio of 4:2:1. Another important part, we can find that the roads and streets were cutting each other at right angles like this. Now why this? Because all houses must have access to at least one road. So if there are four houses, now look, all the houses are having access to one road. Even if we build some houses here and here, they will have an access to the roads by one side. So was the drainage. There was carefully planned drainage system like this grid pattern. This is known as. So this made sure that all the houses are having at least one wall along the roads, so the waste water could flow into the drain. Now even nowadays there is a problem with the waste water, so these things were planned properly during the Harappan civilization. Now if we talk about the architecture of a single house, that is called the domestic architecture, there was a courtyard at the center of the rooms from which can be seen from all sides, no window at the ground level rooms, and no inner view of the interior of the courtyard from the main entrance of the house. This is ensuring the privacy. Bathroom was there in each and every room. Drains were connected through the walls to the main streets. Some staircases were also there. Wells were there in a room that can be reached from outside, which also proves that semi-arid region and the collective approach of the people towards the lifestyle. Less evaporation and more, because now there is an important part: walls in a room, and there was a roof in that particular room where we can find well. So why there was roof? It will lessen the rate of evaporation. And you need to remember that the Harappan civilization is a part of the semi-arid region. There were around 700 wells found in the Harappan civilization. In the drainage system, the house drains sump into the settled soak pit, and then it gets into the main drain. So this is a very well planned drainage system. Now if we talk about the citadel was a special public purpose used buildings. There were two important structures: one is the warehouse and one is the great bath. The warehouse contains the crops, and the great bath was a large rectangular tank surrounded by corridors on four sides, steps leading towards the bath, bricks, mortar and gypsum to make it watertight. So there was a good technology to make this bath. Now water from this great bath will go straight away into the huge drain. There were 8 bathrooms in a small corridor, so it was specially meant for a ritual bath. So if we talk about the citadel, we can find there was colleges, there was pillared well, there was great bath, and there was warehouses. So there was the awareness regarding the literacy. We will also found this literacy thing when we see the seals. There was things written on the seals everywhere, so people could read. Now if we talk about the social differences from the burials, you can find the social differences. Now if you find the wealth inside the burials, like in the pyramid in Egypt, you can easily say that this is the burial of a royal person, the influential one. Now on the other hand, if you don't find anything, that means this is going to be the burial of a common man. So there was a social class division, and also we can easily find out their beliefs in the afterlife. However, Harappans did not believe on burying precious metals with the dead, so it is not very easy to find out the social divisions from the burials itself. Now the luxury items, so historians here played an important role. The artifacts which were found from the Harappan sites were classified into two parts. One is the utilitarian, which is very important for the daily needs, and some luxury items which are rare, which are made up of non-local materials and complex technology. Now near Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, we can find the luxury items which are actually big cities. So we can, and the utilitarians were found near the small cities like Kalibangan. So we can say that there were some big cities and there were some small cities. So that means there were divisions in the society among the people. Now if we talk about the craft production, Chanudhara was a place with small settlement which was devoted to craft production. Bead making, there is metal working, seal making, shell cutting and weight making. Now what are the different metals they used to use? They know the use of copper, they know the use of bronze and gold. And three important centers for this craft production: one is Chanudhara, one is Lothal, one is Dholavira. If we look at another place, we have already talked about the Nageshwar and Balakot. They are near the coast, so they were specialized center for the making shell objects, because shells are easily available near the coastline. So how can we identify these sites? That we can clearly say that Nageshwar was the place where there was craft with shell objects, because sometimes the people leave their unfinished objects, they reject their waste material, and availability of the raw materials at that site indicates that there were some specialized jobs. Now when we talk about crafts and production and manufacturing, there is an important part is procuring the raw materials. The clay was locally available because mostly the Indus Valley civilization was around the Indus River and its tributaries, the river Ganga basin, the Sabarmati, the Mahi river, etc. So it was mostly of alluvial plain, so clay was locally available. Stones, they were brought from outsides. Now models of terracotta like the bullock carts, which makes sure that there was a mode of transport on the land and which was bullock carts. Riverine routes were also used. uh, Nageswar and Balakot are the example where we've already talked about that shell cutting was done there, so it gives us the idea about the sea trade. Sortuga is a fur of Afghanistan, which is a place from where we can bring lapis lazuli, which is a precious stone. Lothal is a source of carnelian, which is of a red color. Steatite were taken from faraway Rajasthan, and some metals are also taken from Rajasthan. So these are the mode of expedition. That means you are sending people to a certain place to bring the material from there for your production. Now if we look at the picture, let's say there is a place A and there is a place B. Now place B is famous for its copper storage, and place A wants that copper to manufacture something, potteries for example. So Harappan style, so if something is getting produced in place A, say this is going to have a resemblance of Harappan style, but if the same copper is found in place B, that will not resemble the Harappan style. So the same two potteries which are having the same copper are not of the same style. So that means copper from this place are taken from place B to place A. Same thing happened with the Harappan civilization. Now if we talk about the distant island and the Mesopotamian scriptures, then we found that copper was actually brought from Oman, and Oman was named like Magan in that scripture. Like Dilmun is named as Bahrain, the modern day Bahrain. So there was contact with Harappan civilization and the faraway lands. So if we also so how did they contact? First of all, there was land route. Now there is a question, are there any sea routes? Means were there any sea routes that time? Yes, there were depiction of ships and boats on certain seals, which ensures that people knew that use of boats and ships that time. Now let's move on to the seal scripts and weights. Seals were used for the long distance communication, sign of genuineness, identity of the sender, and it contains lines for the literates and motifs for the illiterates. Now here, what is a seal? Seal is simply a mark which makes sure that this particular thing has come from the Harappan civilization. There was writing on everything almost, and Ostrofeden was the style of writing. What does that mean? Means in the first line they used the writing from left to right, and in the next line they used to write from the right to left. So this is known as the Ostrofeden style of writing. There was a precious weight measuring system. Stone called church was used. Lower weights were used for the jewelry and the higher weights for the heavier things. If we talk about the administration, there was complex decision making because Harappan civilization was expanding large spaces, but there were standardized artifacts. The weights were standardized. The bricks, we have already talked that the length, breadth and the height was in the ratio of 4:2:1. Town planning was unified and labor mobilization was there. So there was complex decision making that time. No sign of only one ruler. We can already trace that out, that there were 8 special rooms in the Great Path corridor. So it might have been different rulers for the different places. And there was collective decision making, because we have already told that in the town planning there was no large building. That means mostly the people were of almost same category, same hierarchy. So there was a sense of collective decision making in the Harappan civilization. Now how did that civilization end? Plenty of people talks about climate change, deforestation, excessive floods, shifting of the river route. Now this is very important. As a result, the seals got disappeared, the weight system got changed, the abandonment of the cities. Now two things can be there. One is due to the nature, and one is invasion. Now this seals got disappeared, it actually got changed, not disappeared actually. Nothing got disappeared, everything gets changed, transformed. So transformation may be caused by the natural reason, transformation may be caused by the invasion, which is yet to be proved. Now these are the timeline. I have made my own note of that timeline given in that particular book. So here look, the middle Paleolithic, the sites are the Luni Valley and the Bhuta Pushkar in Rajasthan, the Vimbetka, Son, Narmada Valley in Madhya Pradesh, the Eastern Ghats, the Chota Nagpur Plateau, etc. If we talk about the Upper Paleolithic, we can find the ostrich eggshells during that time, and we will come into this once we start geography. It is connected with the continental drift theory, and in the Upper Paleolithic, extremely cold and arid conditions where the river shifted westward in the western India. Vegetation's cover got thinned out and there were grasslands only. Lowering of the sea levels and weak monsoon. Now, what are the different sites? Belan and Son valleys and the Chota Nagpur Plateau, part of Bihar. If we talk about the Mesolithic, there was a vast climate change which gives rise to warmer and humid climate change, increased rainfall, the monsoon get strengthened. As a result, the expansion of flora and fauna, which gives new resources to the human being. Microliths were there. Microliths means smaller stone tools. Crop and animal domestication took place. Example is Adamgarh and Bagur. Adamgarh is in Madhya Pradesh and Bagur is in Rajasthan. First crop to be domesticated are wheat and barley. First animals to be domesticated were dog, sheep, cattle and goat. Example of Mesolithic era sites are the Ganga Valley and the Southeast Asia. Now here is a very important thing. Ganga Valley and Southeast Asia, this region is very famous for rice production. So rice started to get into the food habit of the human beings. Now these are the different sites. In Rajasthan you will find Begor, you will find Sojat. In Gujarat you will find the Sabarmati Basin, the Valsana. In Uttar Pradesh you will find the Morhana Pahar. In Madhya Pradesh you will find the Adamgarh. In Jharkhand Plateau, in South India we can find the examples of this Mesolithic era. Regarding the Neolithic era, Mehergarh is the oldest agricultural settlement in the Indian subcontinent, which is from the Neolithic era. Also the Bolan Valley, and this Neolithic era there are certain distinctive features. Improved farming, cotton seeds were found, metal technology got improved, and there was grain storage. This is also known as the precursor to IVC. IVC stands for the Indus Valley Civilization. There is an important line: discoveries at Mehergarh changed the entire concept of the IVC. If we move on to the Chalcolithic, we have already talked about the different cultures. Then comes the Harappan civilization, and now that questions I have already talked about, the first important question is what are the different distinctive features of the Mohenjo-daro. So let's talk about this in short. First, a planned urban center which contains citadel which were built on platforms. That's why they were higher, but they were smaller part of the city. There were lower town which contains most of the people. A citadel contains warehouse and great baths, which both of them gives great idea about the town planning. The lower town, the house designed to secure privacy, the drainage system, the bricks were standardized, length, breadth, height with a ratio of 4:2:1. Wells in each of the houses because of the arid climate. Now these are the important criteria or distinctive features of the Mohenjo-daro. Next question is, how did the archaeologists identify the socio-economic differences during the Indus Valley Civilization? We already talked the burials. If it is from the hollowed out space, then it is definitely for the common people. If it is brick lined burial, it is definitely for the influential people because bricks were costly. Artifacts inside the burial, if there were artifacts, the luxurious artifacts, it means it definitely be of some influential and rich people. If there was no artifacts, that means of the common people. Availability of the luxury goods. Now in nearby the larger settlements like the Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, we find the luxurious goods, but in some smaller settlements like Kalibangan, like Lothal, we can find the utilitarian goods. So this gives the idea about that there was a socio-economic difference that time. Now there is an important question: do you agree that the drainage system is an example of the town planning? Yes, you need to, because if we look at the structure of the houses, first the platform of the house was built, like this is the city. So they first planned the drains like this. Now in these regions they first built the platforms, then houses were built on this. Now this house, this house, this house. So why was this done? Because they want to make sure that each of the houses get access of at least one side of road and drain. How drains were pre-planned, so that's for sure, before building the houses platform, because once you make the platform you cannot move those houses from this place to that place. Now if we talk about the drains, drains were feed into the covered soak pit, so the heavier things got settled down, and then the remaining fluid gets into the main drain. The dried bricks with standardized ratio, and each house can access the drain and street because of the grid pattern of the construction. So these are the important questions from the Harappan civilization. So good night and have a wonderful time. Thank you.